Do you understand? You must listen.
Mallory warns her children about the dangerous journey they are going to take. She threatens to hurt them if they take off their blindfolds, as looking will kill them. The children, boy and girl, agree, and the three of them make their way down to a boat hidden by the river, counting steps as they can't see. She loads them in and begins rowing. 5 years earlier, Mallory is a pregnant painter. Her sister Jess visits to check on her and can't believe Mallory doesn't know what's going on. Mass suicides in Europe and Russia have resulted in airports and public transport shutting down. They don't know the cause of it. Mallory's more concerned about her child. Jess tries to reassure her that she'll love her baby as soon as they're born, but Mallory knows she won't. Jess insists on taking her to the doctor for a checkup. The atmosphere in the hospital is tense. Mallory sees a woman repeatedly bash her head into a window. She panics and gets in the car with Jess, insisting that they leave now, as whatever was happening overseas is already here. It's chaos as they drive home. Jess's phone rings and Mallory reaches for it. Jess sees something on the road and her eyes darken before she tries to drive their car off the road. Mallory struggles with her, but the car crashes and flips. Jess climbs out and looks back at Mallory one last time before stepping in front of a truck. Mallory's terrified and runs with the crowd. Someone knocks her down. A woman named Lydia argues with her husband, Douglas, about helping the fallen pregnant woman. As Lydia is about to help, she looks at something in the air and begins speaking to her mother before getting into a flaming car.
Keep your eyes down. Keep your eyes down.
An ex-soldier, Tom, helps Mallory up, warning to keep her eyes down. They knock on the door to Lydia's house and are let in. A few people are there along with bitter Douglas, who blames Mallory for his wife's death. Tom recalls his construction crew seeing one of the things before committing suicide. They conclude that looking at the thing makes you want to kill yourself and work together to block out the windows. The last news report warns people not to go outside. All television networks are down. Charles, a paranoid store clerk, claims to know what's going on. He writes a book about entities that take on someone's worst fear, deepest sadness, or greatest loss. It's called Different Things and appears in many cultures, but ultimately represents the end of humanity. They don't believe his theory. 6 hours on the river, the children sleep as Mallory covers them and gives water to the birds in the shoebox. She asks if anyone can hear her on her walkie-talkie, but goes quiet when the birds begin chirping and something outside the boat whispers her name. The group has been stuck in the house for 3 days. The radio reports that people will be fine as long as they don't look at the things. They're discussing finding supplies at a nearby supermarket when a woman knocks on the door begging for help. They fight, but ultimately let her in. Her name is Olympia, and she's pregnant too. She had to make a run for it when her food ran out. One of the men, Greg, suggests they use the surveillance cameras to see the thing. They tie him to a chair at his request, and Douglas grumbles that it's a bad idea. They tentatively wait downstairs and rush back when they hear thudding in the office. Greg saw one of the creatures and rocked his chair until he fell over, knocking his head and dying. 14 hours on the river, a man calls out to Mallory, suggesting it will be better if they take off the blindfolds. He wades towards the boat and says he saw one of the things in the woods.
Take your goddamn blindfold off!
He tells the kids it's okay to look, but they listen to Mallory and lay down. She points a gun in the direction of his voice, but he knocks it out of her hand and tries to snatch off her blindfold. The birds go crazy. She gets hold of a machete and whacks him until he lets go. As he sinks into the river, he calls out that these things are there to cleanse the world. The group soon run out of food at Douglas's home, and half of them decide to make a run to the grocery store. They black out the windows and use GPS to drive. Douglas takes a bottle of alcohol while the rest gather supplies. Tom flirts with Mallory, despite her saying she's much older than him. She sees birds in a cage and puts them in her trolley. Douglas calls everyone over and drunkenly makes a speech about staying there and letting everyone else die and starve. There's a knock on the door to the loading dock. Someone begs to be let in, and Tom has everyone look away before opening the door slightly. Charlie recognizes the man as a fellow employee who was supposedly insane, but ultimately nice. The man cries about being tricked and refuses to say who tricked him. The birds begin chirping, and Mallory insists something is wrong.
There's something wrong.
The man pushes open the door because he wants them to look at the thing. Charlie sacrifices himself, knocking the man over, allowing them to close the door. He goes quiet, and they see blood seep under the door. They get out of there as quickly as possible. The man begins knocking on the door again, softly, begging to be let in. That night, Mallory confronts Douglas about being cruel. The only thing he said about Charlie's sacrifice was that at least they wouldn't have to read his book. Douglas believes there are two types of people, jerks and the dead. Mallory accuses him of blaming everyone else for the things that happen, so he has an excuse to treat people badly. They insult each other, but strangely end up getting along. Now, their calm conversation is interrupted by the sound of the car driving off. The group soon learns that two of the people in the house stole the car and left them all to die. 24 hours on the river. Mallory is exhausted. The boat hits a truck along the riverbank, and Boy falls into the water. She rescues him, but their food and blankets are gone. He apologizes and she reassures him. They hear wind chime, and she reckons there's some sort of house close to the shore. She pulls up the boat and instructs them to stay hidden.
But do not make a sound and do not leave this boat. Do you understand me? Do not leave this boat.
She uses a roll of copper wire to leave behind a path back to the boat. She finds some sort of camping lodge and carefully walks in, gathering supplies. Girl stands up in the boat. Mallory freezes when the copper wire moves on its own. She takes whatever she has, puts her blindfold on, and follows the wire back. She hears her name being whispered and breaks into a run. Girl thinks something is wrong, so she ties a rope around her waist and goes to help. She enters a clearing and thinks she hears Mallory, so she reaches out, touching the edge of a shadow, but then is yanked back by the rope. At the boat, Mallory yells at her for disobeying the rule and putting herself in danger.
Say it! If something happens to me, what do you do?
At Douglas's home, Mallory overhears Olympia let someone in. She points a gun at the stranger, and everyone joins them downstairs. They are angry with Olympia for letting the man in. He explains that he was visiting the city on business, but ended up staying at a friend's house when things went crazy. Someone broke into the house and took them outside to look at one of the creatures. They were happy and wanted to force everyone to take off their blindfolds. His friend attacked the person, allowing everyone else to get away. He says the person wasn't wearing a blindfold, but was somehow still alive. Douglas doesn't believe him, grabs the gun, and tries to force him outside when Cheryl knocks him unconscious. Tom drags him to the garage. Olympia feels bad about what happened and only let the man, Gary, inside because she remembers what it was like to be alone out there. She admits she's spoiled because her parents did everything for her, and then her husband did the same, making her soft. She wishes she was tough, but Mallory says she's lucky. Olympia makes her promise to look after her baby if something happens. Mallory promises and gives her a Hello Kitty keychain as a gift. 38 hours on the river. Girl holds the Hello Kitty keychain close. The river speeds up, so they have a serious meeting. There will be rapids, and someone must help Mallory steer by looking, otherwise they'll all die. Boy volunteers, but she says she'll decide who looks. Olympia and Mallory go into labor at the same time. With everyone preoccupied upstairs, Gary puts on classical music and takes out drawings of horrific creatures. Douglas asks to be let in, but Gary ignores him and puts the birds in the freezer before ripping off the window covers. Tom comes downstairs and is about to ask what's happening when he's knocked unconscious. Douglas is confused, but understands something's wrong when he sees Gary up close. Gary opens the garage door and Douglas covers his eyes. Mallory and Olympia give birth to a boy and a girl. Gary asks to see the babies. Mallory senses something's off. He thanks them and wants to show them something beautiful in exchange. He opens the window and Olympia looks outside. Mallory convinces her to hand over her baby for a minute. She does, and then jumps out the window. Gary grabs hold of Cheryl and forces her eyes open. She kills herself too. Mallory hides under a blanket with the crying newborns. Gary wants her to give him the children. Douglas threatens him with a shotgun, but keeps his eyes closed. Gary toys with him, but makes a noise and gets shot. He wrestles Douglas over the banister and kills him. Tom comes to his senses in time to grab the shotgun and kill Gary. He goes upstairs and comforts Mallory. A few days before the river on the journey, Mallory and Tom were a romantic couple, raising boy and girl as their own children. One night, they heard someone trying to reach out on the radio. His name was Rick, and he gave them instructions to get to a safe community near the river. It's a 48-hour journey along the river, and someone would have to look when they got to the rapids. They went looking for supplies before their trip when a car pulled up outside. People without blindfolds got out. Tom instructed Mallory to leave with the kids and take the boat if he's not back in 15 minutes. He distracted the people outside, but they spotted Mallory and the kids. He risked taking off his blindfolds and saw one of the creatures. He managed to kill everyone who threatened his family, but couldn't resist shooting himself. Mallory cried quietly when Tom didn't come back home and steeled herself for the journey. 42 hours on the river. It's time for the rapids. Girl volunteers to look. At the last minute, Mallory decides no one is going to look. They stay blindfolded and the boat capsizes. All three manage to make it to shore. They walk toward the sound of the birds when Mallory trips and falls down a hill. The kids stay blindfolded and look for her. She crawls back to them.
Isn't it dangerous if I look?
Boy and girl hear Mallory's voice telling them it's okay to take off their blindfolds. She desperately shouts that she's the real voice and finds boy. Girl is scared of her. She apologizes for not letting girl enjoy beautiful things and making her afraid. Girl takes off her blindfold, but doesn't look, and returns to Mallory, who hugs her children in relief. She makes them run when they hear Tom's voice. They finally arrive at the sanctuary. They're allowed to stay when their eyes show they haven't seen the creatures. They're taken to the conservatory, where there are beautiful plants and children playing. Mallory and the kids let the birds go. She names the children on the spot, calling girl Olympia and boy Tom. She introduces herself as their mother and lets them go play with the other children.